Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Humor in the C-Suite. My guest this week is Matt Verlaque. For over a decade, he was a firefighter, and then he accidentally started his first SaaS company up, launching in 2016. Now, if you don't know what SaaS is, it's software as a service. And yes, I had to look that up. Now, he served as a CEO through its successful acquisition in 2020. Currently, he is the CEO of SaaS Academy, helping to train and coach over 500 SaaS founders to build the business of their dreams. Now, outside of his work, Matt is a devoted husband, father to 3 mini sidekicks, and spends his spare time weightlifting, running, and biking. We had a great conversation. He is incredibly insightful and incredibly funny, and you guys are going to love it. So please welcome Matt Verlaque. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Humor in the C-Suite. My guest this week is Matt. How are you, Matt?
How's it going, Kate? Thanks for having me on.
Oh my God, I'm so thrilled to have you here. Everything you do, I love your story. I don't want to spoil it for anyone. So you want to just tell everyone who Matt Verlaque is?
Sure. Let's see. Well, I started out as a firefighter in the East Coast, US, in Maryland, and then in Virginia, and had no plans to do anything remotely involving a C-suite of any type. I spent 10 years or so in the fire department, full time in Arlington, Virginia, and accidentally started a software company with another guy in the firehouse named Jake, and did that. Grew it, sold it because I'm super stubborn and love to learn, and those two things are usually a good combination. And then now I am the CEO of SaaS Academy. It's one of the largest training and coaching companies for other software founders in the world, with my partners Dan Martell and Johnny Page, and just love helping people and hanging out and doing our thing. So that's me in a
Wow,
nutshell.
you're so chill for someone who's so successful.
I
I
keep it
love
chill.
it. Well, I guess it's
Nothing's that serious.
After saving people and burning buildings, I guess not.
Yeah.
So I love that. And you just stumbled upon it in the fire department. Like you were just like, yeah, let's start some software.
Kind of. Like, I didn't actually want to. So I was like a closet nerd, I did some coding in high school and whatnot and had some fun with it. And the way that it all went down is my shift partner in the fire department, Jake, opened a CrossFit gym in his hometown in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. And so, like, I helped him with his website because I knew how to do that. And he and I are both entrepreneurial minded guys. And so we were just riffing on this concept of, like, how can he be the face of the gym and not drop the ball on people who want to join when we're also riding fire trucks for 24 hours at a time, 60, 70 hours a week. And so we ended up building, this is like 2016, so before it was all super duper popular, right? We started building like automated email sequences and text messaging sequences for people who would say they were interested in the gym, because, like, the crazy thing about gyms is so many of the independently owned and operated ones don't have like full-time front desk people, and they're really really bad at calling their leads back. So people call 5 or 6 different gyms before they get one to call them back that they can join. And so
Right.
that was the problem. And so, like, I don't know, long story short, we built it on other people's software. It kept breaking, kept being kind of a pain in the butt, but we figured out there was a huge demand for it. Pre-sold like 60 subscriptions to the software
Wow.
before we even had the software. And so then
Fake
I
it till
went,
you make
yeah, totally. And then it's like, then I went and learned how to code and found the smartest guy in my coding boot camp online and kind of bullied him into being our CTO. And he and I built the software from scratch, and off we went. And
Wow.
that was the journey. It was just kind of like next right move over and over again,
Yeah. Do you miss being a firefighter?
Yes, in certain ways. So
Yeah.
I love the challenges of what I do now, like the challenges and just running larger companies and building technology. It's really fun. But the culture and brotherhood of the fire department is something that's tough to replicate anywhere else. Like, even the
Wow.
tech companies that have a really strong culture, it's still different.
Yeah.
It's still different. So I miss that part of it for sure.
Okay, so now you're running your own company,
Mhm.
SaaS Academy, and are you on? And you're all working remote.
Mhm.
So, how are you using humor to lead from the C-suite when you're working remote and you have so many people working for you?
Yeah, I try to use it constantly, but it's funny. It's just, I don't know. I think businesses are kind of like organisms, right? When they hit a certain critical mass, they start to develop their own personality as an entity, And I think humor for us is one of the things that tends to pop up because we take the business really, really seriously, right? Like
Yeah.
and I was a customer of this company before I became involved with it. So I've been on both sides of this equation. Like when I was a fireman, had no idea how to run a software company. I was a client of SaaS Academy to learn how to run a software company. So like I'm personally tied to the mission of this business. And so it's like we take our performance and the way that we show up for our clients very, very seriously. It's the most important thing that we have. Like when our clients win, everything else works. And
Right.
so I think that humor is a wonderful tool to like offset the serious conversations that have to happen when you're like maniacally in
Yeah.
pursuit of a big goal, you know? So it's like if you can keep the majors, like keep the main
Yeah.
thing the main thing and just take that super serious, then most of the other stuff you can have a lot of fun with. And we love
Falls
to
into
have
place.
fun as best we can. Yeah, for sure.
And do you find you're using humor differently in terms of like people who are working with you and then clients?
Oh yeah, you have to for sure. Because it can be damaging if you do it wrong, right? Like if you,
Yeah.
especially in a training and coaching environment, like you have a client who, hypothetical scenario is like up in a cash crunch and needs to talk about potentially laying off someone on their team or how do they deal with it to make sure their company survives. Like probably the wrong time to crack a joke, And so,
Right. Yeah.
it's definitely tricky. And I think the other cautionary tale of leaning too hard into humor, or at least getting the timing right, is making sure that, and I've done this a number of times myself, where it's like you use humor inadvertently to defuse a tension in a conversation, but
Yeah.
sometimes the conversation needed to be tense, right? And so like I think that
Right.
you using it in to like amplify the joy you get from lighthearted conversations is really important, but not necessarily to minimize discomfort in conversations that might need to be uncomfortable in order to be effective.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do find like when exactly what you said, but when we use humor in those good times,
Yeah,
when we do get to the serious times, we work better collaboratively, I
yeah,
think.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you find like in terms of your team where you're working now, how are you bringing humor remotely into the corporation?
It's interesting. There's different kinds of remote companies, right? There's what I would consider a asynchronous company, which is we're not a very asynchronous. We still do meetings and talk a lot live,
Yeah.
and then there's and there's remote companies who hate meetings, barely do them, write everything down, and both can be effective. They're both awesome ways to run a company. It's
Yeah.
just you're usually one or the other, and so for us, we still have the benefit of doing a lot of face-to-face communication just like this. And so for that, it provides a lot of organic opportunities to, bring humor in as appropriate, where it's like I think it would be a lot tougher in a remote organization to do that right if you're only, written first and everything is through memos and asynchronous communications. It can be a little bit tougher to have fun.
Yeah, I can't even imagine how PS I love you. I don't know. How would you bring fun into that? PS I'm drinking a coffee right now. You can't
Right.
see me.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Like it's tough to deliver a punchline on a pre-recorded Loom video, but I guess it's
Yes.
possible.
Oh my gosh, that is so funny. Can you give it an example of a situation where you would use humor with a client that you found like really worked to sort of make them want to be with your company
Yeah.
or really connect with you?
Yeah, I think that for me, the biggest, especially in a coaching situation, um, the biggest opportunity to do that is probably in humor around my own stories instead of theirs. Right? My favorite type of humor is typically self-deprecating humor. My
Yeah.
team knows this, and so I think in a lot of ways, I would rather make light of a tough lesson I've learned than necessarily make light of somebody else's experience because you don't know how they're experiencing it. So I think
Yeah.
it's a safer way to still have fun within the context of a client experience. And so I always joke I learn everything the hard way, and usually a couple of times. And so if I can tell a funny story about something that I messed up and position it as a cautionary tale of like, don't do this, let's laugh at my
Yeah.
expense, and then you get to be smarter than me, like
Yeah.
and it's great because that's to me, that's the value of coaching. Like people join
Yeah.
coaching companies because you see a return on investment paying for answers. Like that's the reason is I can get from point A to point B faster if I trade money for answers. And like
Yeah.
that's the transaction. And so any way that I can help them accelerate the transformation of their business even if it's
Yeah.
by telling a story of something I messed up on or making a joke at my expense
Do
to
you have
help
an
them
example of
streamline.
one of those stories? Can you think of
Oh
one off
man,
the
I
top?
got examples for days. How much time do we have?
Oh, all day. No.
All day. Let's see. So, yeah, one of my biggest cautionary tales came from getting a little bit too ambitious, cocky. You can pick whatever word you want on shipping a new feature. So, like when you're building software, the generally accepted best practice is to make your changes relatively small. Ship them over time, test each individual component instead of like building some behemoth thing and then like shipping all the code all at once,
Baby
right?
steps,
That's it.
baby. Yeah.
So we didn't do that. So we we were making some huge. It was like 6 or 7 months after we went to market, and this was our first
Yeah.
company, first thing we'd ever coded. So like we're hitting every speed bump on the way, right? And so
Yeah.
we got so much feedback, and we're building this whole new like user interface and changing the way the product works for our customers. And wow, did we mess this thing up. Like we took the software down for like 8 hours. And you got to understand at this point, there were probably 80 different gyms using our software to gather leads to support their businesses. And all
Wow.
those forms went away. Like all we did a bad job. And so it took 22 hours of coding continuously, or 27 hours of coding continuously to get it back online, like fully right. And yeah, it was a disaster. Like I was terrified our customers were going to quit and we were going to lose all our revenue, and
Yeah.
catastrophizing everything. And so I tell that story a lot, and like now it's easy to laugh about because like our customers were amazing because we'd done a lot to help them and build strong relationships. And I shot a
Yeah.
video after and I was like, hey, sorry, like I pushed the wrong button, I messed this thing up, like my bad. And they were super cool about it. And so it's easy to laugh about now, but like when I'm
Yeah.
coaching someone on what not to do when you're shipping a major feature, like that's a great one that you can go giggle at my 27-hour of coding thing,
Yeah.
and not make that same mistake for yourself.
I love that. And because we really do lead by example.
No,
Right? And when we don't take ourselves so seriously and when we can share those stories, and recognizing, you are young, cocky, punk just
totally.
coming up in the corporate environment and
Yeah,
sharing that with future, coders or, software company CEOs, I think is incredible.
yeah.
Do you find that when you do collaborate that way, it does like resonate more than trying to say, do it this way?
Yeah, I think so. Like and it's been interesting because over the past 6 months I've also been putting a lot of time into learning how to create content to try to just share some of these lessons with the world. And it's the same thing. I mean, it's just humans interacting with humans at the end of the day. But I found that it definitely resonates more when you're sharing your experience and what you learned, and you can say like, this is what I went through, or come learn how this was for me, versus here's why I think you should do it this way, right? It's almost like
Yeah,
like you're holding up a mirror, or you just handing out orders kind of thing. But the
right.
difference that I think is really important is if you're the CEO or COO or whatever, like your team is not going to be like, dude, we don't give a shit about what you're saying. Like, whatever, stop
Yeah,
handing out orders. They're going to be like, yeah, it sounds good. And then, be mad behind your
yeah,
back or whatever. Like, if you're creating content, like the metrics are the things, right? Your thing is just,
yeah.
you're going to see viewer retention on a video not hit if the hook is positioned the wrong way or whatever. And so it's actually, I'm finding it's interesting because it's a very pure way to get feedback on your ability to tell a story, because
Yes.
people, when you're doing things on social media, you can see the data based on their behaviors. But when you're interacting with a small team who depends on you to sign their paychecks, it's a lot tougher to get that kind of like just in time feedback on how your message is.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're always gonna laugh at your jokes because 'cause you're paying
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
The old school when the boss laughed and everyone was like, no,
Yeah, yeah,
it's the
exactly, making fun of
worst.
them.
It's the worst.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
like, look, we work really, really hard in our company to make sure that we have a very like candid communication. It's one of our core values, is being candid communicators, and I think that we live up to it. So I don't know that we necessarily have that problem in our company currently, but
yeah.
I would also be naive to think that we don't to some extent. I think it's just humans being humans.
Yeah, and when
So
you are that candid, but you can use a little bit of levity in that, I
yeah,
think it goes way further. People can take it way they can, they're not as sensitive, I
yeah,
don't think.
yeah, I agree.
For sure. Do you find like because you are remote, do you guys get together like once or twice a year or is it just remote?
So we have client events. So most of our in-person reactions revolve around the client events that we run.
Right.
So we'll get together in person 3 times a year. It's not the whole team necessarily, but
Yeah.
like a lot of the client-facing people on the team. But yeah, we tend to anchor them around our client experiences. The events we run are super cool.
Yeah. And are you coaching them to use levity in terms of them actually connecting and communicating with their staff?
That's a good question. I don't think it's something that we coach on specifically.
Right.
Yeah, most of our coaching is focused on either like two things. The overall like strategy and execution of the strategy for the company itself, and then the development of the founder and CEO, the person who we coach. Like they work one to one with executive coaches, but most of
Right.
that's usually on like strategy, leadership, mindset type stuff. And so there may be
Yeah.
a component of those conversations if it comes up, but it's not like a something we reach
Yeah.
for frequently.
Yeah, it's so interesting 'cause I've really been thinking about, like there is so much, it used to be that knowledge was power,
Yeah,
and now expertise is just a click away.
yeah, you're right.
Right? And it's just like, okay, well, how do we actually set ourselves apart in terms of sales and stuff? And I find levity and humor can really do that,
Yeah,
and set you apart from the other people trying to bring their business into it.
totally.
So I think it's great that you're leading that way. Are there any specific techniques when you are dealing with leaders and like in terms of your own life? Like even if you're a leader to your family
Mhm.
or to your community or friends, do you find you're bringing levity where that counts as well?
Yeah, I think it's the same principle, honestly. Right. Where I just, like I think humor is a tool in communication, just like anything else from
Yeah.
tonality and speed and pitch and everything else. Right. And so I think
Yeah.
that I don't know. I don't know that I've analyzed it super deeply, but I think that overall, just trying to layer it in where it adds to the interaction and not distracts from the intent of the interaction is normally what
Yeah.
I hang on. It comes up in parenting too, right? I think that there's
Yeah.
certain areas where you would be taking your children further away from the message that you're trying to convey. But
Yeah.
also, humor is a beautiful way to defuse a really
How
big
old are your
feeling in a
kids?
child. Yeah, 8, 7, and 4.
Oh my gosh, you're in it.
In it, I love it
Oh,
though. It's like
oh yeah.
my reason for everything. I got 3
Yes.
sons, they're amazing, they're amazing kids, and,
Oh my god. Are
we
you
have a
gonna
lot
keep
of fun
going
together.
until you get a daughter? Is
No,
that
no,
like
we're
You're
3
done.
is somewhere between
3.
just right and too many, I don't know, we're good though.
I have 3. You're
There you go,
outnumbered.
you
That's
got
what
it.
happens. You're just outnumbered.
Yeah,
And yeah, you never realize how expensive it is,
yeah.
right? Until somebody steals your identity and it ruins their lives. So,
Right, no
you
refunds.
just got you just got to keep going.
Yeah.
Do you find in terms of team collaboration, it really helps? Like, are you guys being a little goofy when you're all getting together and stuff?
I don't know how not to be a little goofy, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I think the serious things got to be serious, but if everything's serious, then how do you emphasize the things that need to be serious, And so
Yeah.
I tend to default towards having a good time in every interaction that I can. Um
Yeah.
and then when I need to show up differently than that, people will usually pay attention. And that doesn't mean like yelling or anything crazy, it just means
Yeah.
like,
Sure.
hey, let's rally up, we got to go deal with this. People will listen. It's the boy who cried wolf, right? It's like if
Yeah.
everything's an emergency and you suck the joy out of every room you're in, eventually it's just not that much fun.
Yeah, no, that is so true. Do you have tips and advice you could give anyone who's trying to bring humor into their leadership styles?
Yeah, I have one, which is don't work too hard at it.
Yeah.
I think it's actually very counterintuitive, right? Because if you show up and you're like, I'm going to bring humor to work today, like it's probably, what do the kids say? It's going to be cringe, right? It's
Yeah.
not going to go over that well. But I find that I can be a lot more effective and organically have fun when I have deep relationships with the people that I'm talking about. And so I think that like the answer behind the answer is not like it's not about how to bring humor. I think it's how to cultivate a relationship of adequate depth where humor shows up organically, right? Where the types of things that somebody has been through in their life, or the things that make them chuckle, or the crazy thing that happened with their dog last week, or whatever. And it's like when you truly get to know the whole human, as long as you're not a killjoy yourself, like humor is going to happen, right? Because it's just part. I think it's part of the human experience is to just have
I
some fun.
I love that, Matt.
Yeah.
That is like the mic drop moment. I think that is so wise and so insightful. Like I really do believe it because really getting. But do you find because you are remote, it's harder to get to know people that deeply? Like
No,
when
I
you're in the office, you know what they're, you know what kind of tea they're drinking, what they're
mm,
doing, what you know.
no, I don't. I think that it's hard, but I also think that the small talk around the physical office a lot of the time just gives you the illusion that you're closer than you are. And
Ah,
so
yeah,
like I might know what kind of tea you're drinking, but that doesn't mean that I know Kate Davis, right? That doesn't mean that I know
yeah.
anything about you. And um, like I'll tell you an example of how we do this. And look, like some people might think we're crazy, and that's okay too. We love to get weird, but um, like one of the things we do, maybe two examples actually. One of the things we do with various teams, we do this with our leadership team twice a year. So we call it a strengths and weaknesses exercise, right? And so essentially what happens, let's say there's maybe 7 or 8 of us on a team. We do this on Zoom. And basically, like, let's say I'm in the quote unquote hot seat, right? And I've got you on my team and 6 of our peers. You would take a minute, like put like 2 minutes on the clock, and you would write down what is Matt's biggest strength and what is Matt's biggest opportunity to improve. And then you go around the room and each of you would tell me what the biggest strength and biggest opportunity to improve is. And the key is all I'm allowed to say is thank you. And then I just kind of sit with it. And at the end of the exercise, you come back and say, here's what I'm committing to like level up my leadership based on the feedback you guys gave me. So thank you for the feedback. And then we make commitments on how we show up. So like that's one thing that we do. That's not like our full send, right? But that's one way you can kind of build the depth of the relationship. But one thing we did at a leadership retreat last year was something called a lifeline exercise. And so it's essentially you draw a graph on a piece of paper, right? And the horizontal axis is like your timeline through your life, and the vertical axis is the ups and downs of your life from the time you were born until that day. So you draw the ups and the downs, and then you essentially walk the rest of the team through your life. And there's
Wow.
nothing you have to share, right? There's no like weird, awkward, like forced intimacy. Like share whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But the thing is like a lot of people would like we tend to play full out. It's just who we are as a team. And a lot was shared and we all left that exercise with a very, very deep understanding of each other and what we've all been through. And
Wow.
like so that's like playing it on hard mode is doing an exercise like that. But man,
What
dude,
is
like
it called again? What's the
the
exercise
lifeline
called?
exercise.
Wow, that's amazing. And I love the fact in the first exercise, you because I thought you were going to say, what are your strengths and what are your weaknesses?
Yeah.
And what are your strengths and what did you say?
One biggest opportunity to improve.
I love that
Yeah.
instead of
Should
that.
probably call it a
Yeah.
strengths and opportunities exercise. I don't know, right? Yeah, weakness sounds like a
Yeah.
misnomer, but
Yeah, yeah. I was just like, that's amazing because they're
yeah.
also positive and really take that challenge to the next step of really getting to know someone.
Yeah.
And therefore being able to bring humor into that
Totally,
relationship and
because when
knowing
you've
where you
done
stand.
that, like, when you've done that, you can make a
Yeah.
joke. Like, it's not hard, like the people on
Yeah.
that leadership team know each other better and know things about each other that maybe many of our work friends don't even know because we didn't actually create this cauldron, right? They did create this
Yeah.
environment on purpose. And so like it takes deliberate effort, but I would put the team that I'm with who's been through that lifeline exercise, if you were to like measure it on a scale of like how well does this team actually know each other, like I don't care if we're in an office or a tent or living under a bridge, right? Like
Yeah.
the team that goes through an exercise like that knows each other a lot better than like we hung out at the water cooler and I know you like green tea with mint and a sugar, right? Like it's
I
just a
love
different level.
that. Yeah, it's a different level. It's actually intimate,
Yeah. Right.
and yeah, that's amazing. And do you find a lot of the leaders who are under you or getting advice from you, are they taking that back to their people?
Sometimes, yeah, we have
Yeah.
trainings on that. Like we have frameworks they'll take for building a team offsite and how to run the team offsite if it's on like an annual cadence, et cetera. And so like a team building exercise is one of the components of running a team offsite. So yeah, we'll coach against some exercises like that. Yeah, like the whole company operating rhythm, that's something that falls into it. It might be on the
Right.
fringe of it. It's not like your weekly team meeting or your business
Yeah,
scorecard,
of
but
course.
it's an important part, especially as your team starts to grow. I find that usually 12 people is the first break point. Like 12 and 50, I find are the two places where the interpersonal dynamics in a company really start to change, because like
Wow.
once you hit 12, you like before 12, everyone knows everything, right? Because there's just not enough people go around. The
Yeah.
one person you got in marketing knows what the one person who's selling stuff is doing, and vice versa. When you hit 12, that breaks, and you have to like communicate on purpose. And so that's when like the team meetings and like the scorecards, if you don't already have them, like some of these cadences really start to happen. And then again at like 40 to 50, the things that you were doing at 12 tend to have to like stop being company wide rhythms and start being departmental rhythms that roll up into a company rhythm.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
it's like not it's not that you stop doing the thing, it's that the environment in which you're doing the thing becomes too large. So then you have to start doing the thing in smaller environments, right? And in order to
Yes.
keep it appropriate. So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that kind of redefining how you communicate at those two breakpoints. And I'm sure there's more as you get bigger, but those are the two I've experienced.
Yeah, that's amazing. I find, because I do a lot of comedy shows still, if I'm doing a show for 10 people in a boardroom or 20,000 people in a stadium, it's such a different energy.
Yeah.
I can't perform if I'm in a boardroom with 10 people. It puts so much pressure on them to laugh.
Right.
It's just like, oh, whether, but if I'm in a huge, comedy club or whatever, it's way easier for
Yeah,
sure,
that makes
or
sense.
just like a different dynamic,
Yeah.
and it's do you find because you're pretty young still, do you find working intergenerationally is different for you in terms of bringing humor and levity into that?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So I'm 38, and it's interesting because like Gen Z is like starting to come into the workforce a lot
Oh
more,
yeah,
and
they're good at boundaries, eh?
yeah,
Woo!
sometimes, but it is funny. So I've got a great videographer who works on my team named Cooper, and I hired him when I started leaning into content. He's 22, I think, right now, so he's got
Yeah.
about 16 years on him, and it's funny. Like we get along really, really well and have a lot of the same interests, but he was the first guy I ever worked with that made me feel old. Like I'll drop a movie reference, I'll make a joke from like Wayne's World or something, and he's like,
Yeah.
"What are you
What's
talking
that?
about?" Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I was like, "Damn, it happened! It finally happened. I'm old."
Don't I showed my kids Jaws and they
Oh
just
yeah,
laughed. They're like, "What is this?"
it was so
It's
terrifying,
like
right?
looks like a rubber fish. I'm like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
"Stop." We were
Oh man,
terrified.
yeah,
We would swim in the ocean all summer.
yeah. There's honestly, I think that there are. It's funny. So the generational thing is one example of this, but I think everyone tends to focus on what's different between things, right? What's different between businesses, what's different between industries, what's different between generations. I like to flip that question as often as possible and say, what is the same, right? What are the things that are not going to change? And so when I look at interacting with someone who's Gen Z, I'm a millennial. I think they're calling me a geriatric millennial nowadays. It feels rude,
Wow.
yeah, get my
Rude. That is rude.
right? But so for all the differences, I'm sure there's tons. There's a lot
Yeah.
of stuff that's the same, right? People want to be seen and heard and appreciated. People want to have meaning in their work, and they want to be working towards a mission that they actually give a shit about, and they want to
Yeah.
feel like someone's leaning into them and coaching them and mentoring them and showing them the path, and from a professional orientation. And so I think when
Yeah.
I lean into that kind of stuff, I don't stress about the generational thing because everything else is details. Like, what are we doing? Why are we here? Are you valued as an employee? Am I teaching you stuff? Are you teaching me stuff? Like, are we playing the same game? And if we are, I don't care how old they are. You'd be 8 or 80 if they're doing the thing. Then rock and roll.
Yeah.
It's all good.
I love that. I feel the same way. I just feel most of my friends are younger than me because
Mhm.
I'm pretty
Yeah,
awesome. Whatever. No, but it is. I'll say something and I'll be like, "Is that and they'll be like, "What are you talking about?" I'm
yeah,
like, "No, that's what we called it." You know, it's
yeah. It's
yeah,
funny because it's a really good approach to business strategy in general too. Is figuring out what are the things that are going to stay the same. Like Bezos talks about this,
yeah,
in a lot of his strategy with Amazon, right? Is it's like people are never going to be like, man, I just wish I could find less things to buy that cost more and get here slower, right? Like
right,
Amazon's
yeah,
always going to be the same. Like Morgan Housel wrote a book on this called Same as Ever. And it's just like this list of like short essays and questions on things that are always going to stay the same, So
yeah,
I first heard it from Bezos in an interview, but but yeah, I just think it's a super useful frame for everything. It's like if you're playing on a long enough time horizon, then the new hotness, right? AI,
Yeah.
blockchain, Web3, the internet,
Yeah.
whatever, whatever it was,
Yeah.
it's like it all becomes normal. It comes up, it comes down, whatever it
Or
changes. But
things come around, like
yeah,
flares are back. Who
yeah,
would have thought all my flare pants would be
yeah,
back?
ready to go.
Or pleather. Pleather is back.
I got a closet full of cutting edge fashion right there, Katie. Ready to
Oh,
go.
baby, I'm
Yeah.
bringing it back.
Yeah, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I like to think about what humans are still going to be humans. We're all going to care about the same stuff at
Yeah.
the end of the day. It's
Yeah,
I don't really look at it.
amazing. Amazing. Okay, so do you find have you experienced any like real personal benefits from keeping lighthearted, whether, whether it was with your company in the C-suite or with your family or being a firefighter,
Yeah, uh,
like
yeah. In the fire department for sure, because that is a crazy profession in a lot of
yeah,
ways, and
I can't.
I don't just mean it in the obvious ways. Like, sure, you see
Yeah.
some stuff that affects you, but there's also a lot of other things that make it difficult that people don't consider. Like the hours are usually long and or weird. You're staying up all night. Your circadian rhythm
Yeah.
is completely trashed. Like it's tough on relationships. You're missing holidays. Like all that kind of stuff. Like humor and particularly like you know probably more like dark fringy humor for
Yeah.
most non you know fire department type people, but it is one of the coping mechanisms that I think
Yeah.
is pretty prevalent, and it's one of these things where it's like you do it to stay sane in a lot of ways, but also recently, last 10, 15 years or so, the fire department in general has taken a lot of steps forward as far as like actually paying attention to mental health and physical health of
Yes.
people in the job, so now we talk about stuff, which is actually healthy. It's kind
What?
of
That's
crazy. Yeah.
crazy. Yeah.
But it doesn't remove the role of humor. I mean, it is a good coping mechanism when things are getting,
Yeah.
crazy and hard. It's shit, you might as well laugh about it, right?
Oh my god. It is such a coping, like my whole family has been like that forever. And even my dad who's passed away now, he was like
Hmm.
81 or whatever when he passed. But he had lung cancer and he'd like be coughing and get in an elevator and he was like, "It's okay everyone, it's not a cold, it's just cancer. You're good. You're not going to catch anything."
Yeah.
But
So humor
it's
runs
just
in the
like,
family. I see. That's
oh
awesome.
my gosh, he was always
I
just
love it.
cracking jokes and just talking to everyone. So I'm like, be like, "Do you know them?" He's like, "No, but I do now."
Yeah.
So
That's cool.
it's just amazing. So I always love to end this. I've had such a good time, and
Same. It's been
you
a
are
blast.
really are wise beyond your years, young
Oh,
man.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, honestly, I think it's really great for people to get every industry and
Hmm.
how people are using. I've had construction people, CEOs, I've had people, in the military and startups and this. So I just find it so fascinating how everyone's using it a bit differently, but as you say, still the same.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
So and finding those similarities within it. So we always like to end is what is the funniest thing that's ever happened to you? Do you have a story you can share?
The funniest thing
I know.
ever happened to me. I have a story I can share. I want to make it a good one. Let me see. There's a
All
lot of
right,
silly
you
stuff
take your
that's happened to
time.
me. All right. I've never shared this before, but so it might not be that funny. We're gonna find out though.
Stop it.
I used to, when I was a young firefighter, constantly break everything, but a lot of the time, my phone. I've lost more phones on fire trucks than I would care to admit. And so I was in the firehouse and I set my phone on the side of the fire truck, got in the fire truck, drove it down the street, lost the phone, right? Ha ha ha, stupid. Got a new one. And like 3 days later, got out of the fire truck, dropped it on the ground, and then the driver backed in the firehouse and ran the new phone over at the same time. So I mean, just I don't know. I'm just throwing money at Apple's bottom line at this point. Just
Oh
crushing
my
phones. So
gosh.
so for a while, I had all these different phones lined up that were all smashed, broken, busted, in various levels of destruction. I never like burned one up, um, but I definitely used a fire truck to destroy two of them, and I think that Yeah, I don't know. It's just funny. It's like I love when things happen over and over again, right? It's like you think you
Yeah.
solved the problem and then something keeps popping up and keeps popping up. I don't know. It's
I
just
kept
one
putting
of those
my
things.
phone in my back pocket, and then I'd go to the bathroom and it would always fall in the toilet, and I'd be
Oh,
like,
nice.
"No."
I did that with a pair of sunglasses in Los Angeles airport, and that's where they stayed because
Yeah, exactly.
not fishing something out of an LAX toilet to put it on my face. I promise you that. Oh man, that was good.
That's very funny.
Yeah,
I'm gonna quote you on that. I'm not fishing
perfect.
anything out of an Perfect. Oh my gosh, this has just been so much fun. Thank you so much for
Yeah,
hanging
thanks for
out with
having me. It was a
us.
blast.
And yeah, and just sharing your perspective on humor and in leadership. It's pretty amazing, and just the work that you're doing and how many people you're coaching and how many people that is affecting on their end is amazing.
Yeah, we're trying to pass it along. We're all built on the shoulders of giants, Kate. You know, it's like there's so many. I don't know. Everyone fancies that they got all these original ideas. Most of us don't. You know, a lot of the time it's
I
doing it for people
know.
and packaging them up. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But there's just so many people that have helped me and taught me so much. And I think
Yeah,
it's just a cool privilege to be able to package it up just a little differently and pass it along and help some people. You know,
I
it's pretty
love
neat.
that. Ah, I love it. Thank you so much.